Hi and welcome to the channel. Thanks to various time constraints, this has ended up becoming the very first video that we'll be uploading. It wasn't the original plan, but there it is. Be assured though, there will be more to come and we've got some fun things planned going forward. I'll quickly start by prefacing that we are a Star Trek channel, pretty obvious, and we'll be putting out regular content based on the many iterations of Trek, so if you could give the video a like and possibly even a subscribe if you're curious what else we've got coming up, that'd be great. So quick disclaimer, we did not pay for this game. A review copy was kindly provided by Dramatic Labs to give a boost to a starting channel. They've been absolutely golden, however, that won't be influencing the review in any way and I'll be giving my honest impressions of the game. So, what is Star Trek Resurgence? Well, it's a narrative-heavy game, very much in the mould of the Telltale series. Indeed, the team at Dramatic Labs is made up of ex-Telltale staff, and the pedigree does show. The bulk of the game consists of making choices in both dialogue and gameplay that will affect how the story unfolds. There are also some interactive elements, a few action scenes and exploratory sequences peppered throughout too, but we'll get to those later. You control two characters on the science vessel, the USS Resolute, the story switching back and forth between them. Jara Rydek is the ship's new first officer, slotting into the role after the previous number one was killed in an accident that the ship's captain may, or may not, have been responsible for. Rydek is a member of an alien race known as the Kobliads, who require a supply of duridium in order to stay alive. It's something that affects both her health and how members of the crew view her. Carter Diaz, on the other hand, is a petty officer of the lower decks. He spends most of his time filling in odd jobs on the ship and having a strong bond with his fellow lower deck shipmates, giving us a window into the day-to-day running of a starship. Both characters are instantly likeable. Rydek has a lot to prove and is thrust into a difficult situation with a nervy and at times even prejudiced crew. Diaz, on the other hand, is a charismatic centre to his friend group, who are frequently caught risking their lives for the good of the Resolute. Both are a lot of fun to play as, and I was invested in both of them throughout the 12 or so hour length you'll be working through. The game wastes no time in throwing the player into a dense plot involving intrigue, action and the threat of war, with more than a few callbacks to elements from 90s Trek and beyond. Most of the situations you'll find yourself in are extremely tricky, with no solution feeling like the obvious correct answer. It leaves you always on your toes and makes the game all the more engaging. Dramatic Labs have absolutely nailed the feel of Star Trek with this one. If you ever wanted to play in an episode of Trek, and why wouldn't you, this is it. You can tell that the team are huge fans of the franchise and have laboured so much love and attention to detail that it's difficult not to be impressed. They've taken everything they learned at Telltale and taken it to the next logical level. How very Vulcan of them. The fact the team is so small makes it all the more impressive. Just wandering around the Resolute using the tricorder and repairing shuttles is sure to have most Trek fans in a state of ecstasy, and it's all these touches that make Resurgence such a delight to fans of the franchise. That's not to say that anyone not so familiar with Trek will feel left out. Everything is well explained and the world is easy to slip into. Graphics are generally decent. The game was made with last generation hardware in mind, however it does run with enhancements to resolution and frame rate on newer consoles and PCs. The ships and interiors all look like they should, and the vistas of the strange new world you'll be exploring also look very nice. It won't be winning any awards in the looks department, but it has a style that works and genuinely looks very pretty at times. Characters' facial animations are also extremely good, something vital for a game that is so dialogue heavy. Emotions are conveyed convincingly, and there are no Mass Effect Andromeda problems. Character movement isn't quite as polished, though it's never a problem or distracting. They're simply a little stiff at times and lack the same level of care as the faces. The music, however, I did find extremely distracting, and unfortunately my first real gripe with the game. While the production is handled well, the compositions just don't quite feel like Trek to me. They reminded me of something from Movie of the Week Sci-Fi Channel, or even music from the 90s Trek pinball or PC games. Maybe they're an homage to that. It didn't quite work for me, however, and I often found the soundtrack to be quite jarring. I get that the budget was probably stretched quite thin by this point, but it's a shame that library music from the next generation couldn't be used, or even coaxing Dennis McCarthy back for one more crack at the soundtrack. It's not game breaking, but it's one of the few missteps the game makes. However, I understand that will be entirely subjective to the listener. Some of the music is decent admittedly, but when it misses the mark it really stands out, and it pulled me out of feeling like I was in an actual episode of Trek. While we're on the negatives, I would also say that some of the tasks you have to do in the game can be a little clunky or repetitive. They're generally quite short, and it only really becomes a problem in the few instances when they go on too long and outstay their welcome. If the game had the engine of something like Mass Effect, mixed with the dialogue and facial animation of this game, we'd be keyed in for the optimal Star Trek experience. That kind of game, however, would cost an astronomical amount, and will be prone to all manner of possible bugs and problems, so what we have here is the next best thing, and a compromise I'm more than happy with. So in closing, how does Resurgence rank amongst the pantheon of Star Trek video games? Well, this is where it gets tricky. My favourite games that have the Star Trek badge on the box are probably still going to be things like Elite Force or Bridge Commander. Does that make them the best Star Trek games, though? Probably not. Fun as they are, they don't capture the human element that makes Star Trek Star Trek. Resurgence, on the other hand, manages that with ease. So whilst it might not be the best video game with Star Trek branding, it's the best game we've had so far at replicating an interactive adventure in the Trek universe. That puts it on top in that regard for me, and I hope we get more from Dramatic Labs in the same vein. My rating for this game is a more than impressive 8 out of 10.